Greetings from the far side of the galaxy, I'm Fuuri, your host, the most who didn't know what kind of video to make that wouldn't take a bajillion years, so I decided to double down and just go ahead and make that bajillion year video. I don't really have anything to say here, so let's just go ahead and get this video started. The first manga we're talking about is one I've discussed before, and it's called The Spicy Ninja Scrolls. This manga is actually a doujinshi, or doujin for short, which is to say it's an indie work not affiliated with a publisher like Shueisha or Yen Press or something like that. It was made by the artist Kinoshita Jiro, who you can find on Twitter, link in the description, who you may know from his work on games like Tokyo After School Summoners. It takes place on the island nation of Yamato, which was once ravaged by the fires of war, and of course many ninja fought for the many sides. However, when the war ended, they were faced with the question of what to do, and so ninjobs were formed. And yes, they are actually called ninjobs. Don't hate on the world's greatest pun. At the behest of his grandfather, this green dog, wielding the miraculous power of the Shinsu Riki, heads out to become a ninja, going to Misty Mountain and becoming one of the spicy ninjas. His new master names him Wasabi, and he's joined by his nakama, hashtag Naruto reference, the mischievous Shichimi and the serious Orochi. Just for some context, because that is going to sound insane if you don't know, Shichimi and Orochi are popular Japanese spices, so that's why they're called the Spicy Ninja. What makes the Spicy Ninja Scrolls stand out in my mind is that it's, well, just shonen. I know shonen is seen as this basic common denominator when talking about anime and manga, but no, seriously, check the manga I've covered and realize how few of them are shonen. I've covered so much slice of life, I've covered so much romance, and I don't even— okay, well, I like romance more than I originally thought. So just some regular action-filled shonen is such a breath of fresh air. This manga has action, adventure, and that Saturday morning cartoon vibe. You'll see the characters in these Monster of the Week style chapters where they fight one wacky thing after the other. And then you can throw in a good sense of humor to top it all off. Like, not in a million years would I expect a Mariah Carey reference in a Japanese manga. The series is good fun in how childish it is, bringing you back to those shows like Pokemon where it's all good fun. But that's only for the first quarter of the series, because the Spicy Ninja Scrolls does have an overarching plot. There's a warlord vying to make a return in the background, horrible human experimentation, and grotesque body horror hidden just past the series' early chapters. And it handles this transition really well, where it's a smooth increase in tension as things get more dangerous and bloody. And yet, within all the blood is a very tender story about family and the things we do for them. There's Oroshi's dead father, Shichimi struggles with his non-shinobi family, and Wasabi and the other spicy ninjas. The Spicy Ninja Scrolls never forgets its sense of humor either, as you'll always find yourself having something to laugh at. Be that a joke about Konatsu's age, or the subjective appearance of a magical old man. But the manga also has enough self-control not to ruin the serious moments due to an obsession with quips. The art also makes this manga a total joy to read. It's cute in a cartoonish way that makes you want to just grab the characters and see how well they do under hydraulic press. Just give them a good old squeesh. But the art is also capable of doing good action, which matches well with unique fighting styles in the manga. The Spicy Ninja Scrolls has been a favorite of mine for quite some time, and it makes me sad that it's so niche. There's currently 12 volumes released, and all have been translated. You can't buy them physically, but you can buy them digitally, so of course, I've thrown a link to them down below. And this might genuinely be one of the cheapest mangas I've ever bought, because a single volume is like $3.50. That's like 40 bucks for the entire series. I would tell you to like and subscribe so you know when I make an entire video all about the Spicy Ninja Scrolls, but I kind of already did that. Though that's not to say you shouldn't still like and subscribe. Maybe when the entire thing is done, I'll go ahead and make another video about it. The next manga we have to cover is something that's been recommended to me for quite a while. It's called I Am a Cat Barista. This may come as a shock to some of you, but it's all about a cat who's a barista. His name is Hachi, and he runs Cafe Hachiware, where you can come and he'll listen to your problems, offering friendly advice and a nice drink. The series is episodic, with little connecting tissues between each chapters, bordering on an anthology. The biggest piece of connective tissue are the reoccurring characters, but each chapter does work independently of the others. What spices the manga up are the variety of people that come to Hachi's shop. He could help a kid who's burned out on studying, or maybe an athlete struggling to break a new record. A reoccurring customer is Mitsubachi Kane, an office worker with just like the worst boss, and I do mean the worst. There's a chapter where he's bad-mouthing her, and I want to say it was behind her back, but she was like 2 feet away. Since all of her problems relate to working, it means she has some of the most relatable chapters out of them all. Regardless of character or problem, the thing that ties all these chapters together is the premise of Hachi being the helpful little cat he always is. One chapter he's helping a shy girl, and the next he's helping find a lost cat. For a manga that almost never leaves Cafe Hajiwara, it has so much variety. Sometimes he's not even helping a customer, since Hachi does have some furry friends of his own. The stories are all very down to earth, and it gives the manga a humble feeling that few others have. A particularly heartfelt moment is towards the end of the second volume, where we get Hachi's backstory. It's super touching and actually explains why there's Beastman in this world, so I won't spoil it here. The manga does make its art work for it, with the relatively simple designs and style that contrasts from the impressively detailed drinks that Hachi serves. It's a bit hard for me to fill this section of the video because the manga is actually quite short. It's only around 14 chapters spread across 2 volumes. It's so short that I unironically read the entire thing in like an hour. But even if it was short, I gotta say it was a pretty good hour. Both volumes have been translated officially, and despite looking, I've not been able to find out if there's going to be a third or even if there is a third. Like seriously, I checked Amazon, and not just the English Amazon, I checked the Japanese Amazon and found nothing. The manga doesn't have one of those big "the end" thingies at the end, so I'm not sure if it's just 2 volumes or if there's more on the horizon somewhere. It's a bit of an odd note to end things on, but it's what happened. The original manga for this part of the video was called Smell. It was a manga by Nagabe, the guy who made Shulal Rune. But it turns out that manga has content YouTube's policies won't like, so here's your nice wholesome substitute called Breakfast with My Two-Tailed Cat. This manga is all about Asano Soichiro, who's basically Carl from Up if instead of building a flying house, he moved to the countryside. And oh yeah, if his wife was still dead. What sets Soichiro apart from Carl is that he had a cat named Ni, and when his wife died, the cat ended up turning into a 2-tailed Nekomata yokai. Don't worry, he's not evil or anything. The only thing he wants to do is eat good food and make sure his dad isn't lonely. And that's it. That's the entire manga, and wouldn't you know it, it's fucking peak. The cat, Ni, is genuinely one of the cutest things ever put to page. Despite his size, he's just a regular cat and behaves exactly like one would. He's bouncy and playful and even has a habit of adding nya to the words he says. Soichiro, or Dad as Ni calls him, is much more somber and mostly used to add the emotional core to the story. The main idea behind every chapter and why it's called Breakfast with My Two-Tailed Cat Yokai is Dad making Ni food. What makes this stand out from a lot of other cooking mangas to me is that Dad isn't some super skilled cook. He's not super confident in his skills, and the dishes he makes are pretty simple. This makes him novel when it comes to a cooking protagonist, but the things he makes are stuff you could totally make for yourself. The ingredients he uses aren't even that expensive. In fact, I think the most common thing they eat in the manga is bread and eggs. Though the cooking isn't the only thing they do in the manga. Every so often, the pace is broken up by these small stories which just deal with the daily life of Dad and Ni. And there's also a lot of moments when they go out and take a walk, letting us get a feel for the setting. It's a rural Japanese mountain village, and the people there are just so nice. There's the old couple selling vegetables, and even the kid that helps Dad forage for mountain greens. The part that will definitely keep you reading is all the moments when Dad flashes back to his dead wife. Despite the overall jovial tone of the manga, these reminders of his wife make her absence feel palpable despite the fact that she's not properly in it. If I had to take a stab at describing the tone of the manga, it'd be a lot like Persona 3. Yes, it deals with heavy topics like death and doesn't shy away from how sad such a fact can be. But the overall message is very positive, telling you that it's valuable to keep on living even if those you care about have already moved on. The weirdest thing about the manga is that despite having 8 chapters across 2 volumes, it's quite long simply because the chapters themselves are so big. I think the shortest is like 34 pages and the longest are in the 50s. It currently has 2 translated volumes, but I know a 3rd is on the way, so feel free to pick these up for yourself. The penultimate manga we'll be talking about today is called Soara and the House of Monsters, and out of all the manga I've read for this video, this is the one that blew me away the most. The concept for the manga is simple. Humans and monsters have been at war for ages, and Soara is being trained as the ultimate weapon. She's gifted, blessed, the greatest soldier to ever fight against the monsters, but right when she's said to be unleashed upon the menace, the war ends. Left without a purpose, she wanders the monster kingdom until she comes across a trio of dwarves. And what do these dwarves do? Well, they build houses for monsters in need. Soara can barely understand this. It goes against everything she's been told about monsters, but given her harsh and brutal upbringing, she does understand the need for a home. So, she chooses to travel with these dwarves to try and square these 2 parts of what she knows in her mind. It's a fairly unique concept for a manga. The only other manga I can think of that focused on building houses was Build King way back in 2021, though I didn't read that. Soara and the House of Monsters takes itself chapter by chapter, where the group of 4 travels to various vistas and locations accepting commissions. It's a good way to let the audience get a good look at this wild and wacky world that is the monster country. You'll get to see griffins, goblins, and slimes, and the story fleshes out their daily lives by showing you how they struggle to live and what goes into building a house for such a variety of creatures. The manga even gives full diagrams of the houses, letting us understand every bit of the houses they're living in. No creatures are the same, and so no struggles are the same, and thus none of the houses they build are the same. You always get something different. But that's only for the manga's earliest chapters, because they do quickly get an actual, more direct and overarching goal. The chapter it happens is the one that really made me fall in love with this manga, and was when I decided that I absolutely must cover it in this video. Chapter 5. The House of Forbidden Love. It starts with the group getting a letter telling them to head to the Demon King's castle, but on the way they come across a couple. A mermaid named Mirabelle and a thunderwolf named Balder. Despite how much they love each other, they can't be together for one simple problem. Mirabelle is weak to lightning. They're about to call off the relationship when the main cast decides that even if he's going to flay them alive, the Demon King can wait while they build these 2 a home for their happy ever after. And I absolutely love the relationship between the main group. Crick and his band of dwarves have a genuine sense of camaraderie to them, and they extend that olive branch to Soara, who's had none of that. But fighting really isn't what the series is about. It's about watching them build Balder and Mirabelle a house that absorbs all the electricity so they can finally hug each other. It's so sweet, and seeing those 2 monsters who shouldn't be compatible actually find a way to be together ties into one of the biggest themes of the work. This manga is all about examining your own biases and learning that there's more to the world than you think. The only issue I have with this series isn't even necessarily with the series, but that I'm totally towing the line with putting it in the video. There are more than a few furry characters, from Balder to Shiva to even his cat She, but none of them are main characters, so I kind of hesitate to call this a furry manga. I just really had to talk about this manga because it was one that left me so surprised. The art is so good and the characters are so charming. I have no idea how this manga isn't more popular because I adore everything about it. It has 3 volumes out right now, but a 4th is planned to be released January 20th. If any manga on this list is going to be made into a full video, it is 1000% going to be this one. So be sure to read it for yourself and to like and subscribe to know when I make it. The final manga we'll be covering is one that totally caught me by surprise. Like out of nowhere, I find out that these got a translation, and the manga's called Fuga, Melodies of Steel. This manga is one of those video game tie-ins with a game of the same name. I've been a huge fan of Fuga and the wider Little Tales Bronx series for a while, to the point that this isn't even the first time I've talked about the series. Shameless plug to that other time, so I was all over this manga. Fuga begins in the sleepy little village of Petite Mona, but things quickly turn terrible when they're invaded by the Nazis, the Burmans, so yeah, the dog Nazis. The children's only hope is a voice on the radio and a massive tank that seems more like a mobile fortress. Will they be able to save their family, or will they die trying? The answer to that is that they'll die trying, but time is more malleable than one might think. The thing that makes me love Fuga is how somber the story is. It's a story about war and doesn't really shy away from the fact that it is a tragedy. We have to actually see the kids steel their resolve to kill someone in self-defense, and the victory feels so sour. But that's all stuff the game already covers. What the manga expands on is the beginning. We get a much better look at what the main cast's life was like before the invasion, and it creates a good contrast when things finally go straight to shit. And even when things go straight to shit, we get to see them actually obtain the tank rather than the brief still shown in the game. And then, when the manga gets to the combat and fighting, it interprets the game's mechanics into a way that actually makes sense. Like, a core part of Fuga's gameplay is that you have 3 active characters and 3 in support paired in teams of 2. And you had to constantly switch between who was active and who was supporting and those on standby, so getting to see how that physically work outside of a menu is pretty cool. The same could be said for seeing the characters buy things. It's an actual interaction and not just menus. Despite all my talk about expanding on content, reading the manga did actually make me understand how quick the game would have been if not for those regular battles. It goes from one major plot point to the next, and while I understand that this is an official tie-in, the author's working with limited time, it's missing the character interactions. Which is especially weird since interactions were actually a full-blown mechanic in Fuga, so I don't know why they're absent. The second volume is much the same as the first, as the manga proceeds like normal, following the games quite closely. And that's not a problem because the game story is amazing. Like, look at Flam, who's just a victim of indoctrination and at the same time the perpetrator of brutal violence, who says they should be grateful for being invaded and slaughtered. If you're a fan of Fuga and played the first game, I'm gonna recommend you leave now. Read the manga because what I'm about to say is pretty huge. Consider this the biggest spoiler warning of the video. As I was saying, if you've played the games, you'll get to the latter half of the second volume and you'll begin to realize that, wait a minute, things are different. And it's such a wild realization because things are now getting off track and you're left utterly shocked. And I think that's the part that makes me love this manga so much. It's the knowledge that it's more than just an adaptation. Remember, time is malleable, so while it's not exactly canon, it does tie into the overall lore of the series and is telling an entirely new tale. While only 2 volumes have been translated, the Little Tales Bronx Wiki has a summary of the entire manga, and Volume 2 is just the beginning of the changes. If you love Fuga, you owe it to yourself to check this out. Would I recommend it to someone new though? Yeah, kinda. While it's definitely better to have just played the games as you'll be missing out on a lot, it's certainly a way to introduce the characters to new people. What's more is that this manga is surprisingly cheap. I bought both volumes together for like $7. They are digital media only, so sorry for you physical media fans. And that's the video. What did you think of it? Do you have any other manga to recommend me? Be sure to leave those in the comments while I get to our Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to Choron, SkyKing64, 87 Werog, Garen LaFaze, Soara Chow, and Marvola. For 4 stars, we have Miko and Otterly Awe, the Fiendsmiths. And for our super duper special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower, the Bow of the Goddess. Second, Spidey Zack, the King Calamity. Then the Good Old Days, the Lady of the Eternal. Followed by Hotari Lion, the Snake Eye. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe, and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, this is Fuuri signing out.